Tēnā tātou katoa. Anau mai hoki mai rā ki tō tātou paipurangi. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your time in the social lounge. You got to mingle with one another, albeit virtually. Hoi anō tēnei te ni atu ki a tātou katoa. So you've heard from the ministers, and we all have a part to play in the new vocational education system. At the same time, you are all active members of your respective communities. You are parents, you are aunties, you are uncles. So what is it that you want to see these reforms achieve? So we're very fortunate to have an esteemed panel of members today that have joined us. And it is my privilege to introduce all of our panel members. And once I have finished introducing these panel members, the time will be offered over to them to talk about what the RoVE vision means to them and what they want to see out of the reform. So firstly, I would like to introduce Gillian Dudgeon. Gillian Dudgeon is the Deputy Chief Executive Delivery of the Tertiary Education Commission. And today, Gillian will be standing in for Tim Fowler, who is the CE and who is the SRO for this kaupapa. I would then like to introduce Iona Holstead. Iona is the Ministry of Education Chief Executive and Secretary for Education. Following Iona, Stephen Town, Tupukanga Chief Executive. Toa Whaneva, North Tech Chief Executive and Tai Tokero RSRG Co-Chair. Following Toa, Dr. Grant Clinkham, NTQA Chief Executive. Following Dr. Grant Clinkham, we have Dr. Wayne Ngata, Taumata Aronui Chair. And to conclude, we will have Henerangi Edwards, Rangahora WDC Chair and Executive Director of RTS Solutions. Kei aku rangatira, kei ngā pai, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Koutou ka whai wāhi mai nei ki tēnei paipurangi, ki tēnei kōrero, ki tēnei wānanga, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Again, I would just like to acknowledge you all for taking the time and effort for us, for you being here today. So on behalf of everybody present, thank you very much. And I'd like to hand now the time over to you all to provide your vision. Te aku rangatira, kia koutou.
Nā mihi, Lee. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, ke tēnei hui a tīma, o ku rangatira, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. And firstly, huge apologies from Tim, who was supposed to be with us this morning, but unfortunately is unwell. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues on the panel who have all been part of this mahi to date as we create this new vocational education and training system. There's been an enormous amount of work done already. The foundations are being put in place, but our job now is one of implementation and integration. So RoVE's vision is for the vocational education and training system to actually work as a system, built on all parts, working together collaboratively to ensure better outcomes for all learners, employers, iwi and communities. It's going to take time as things have to, happen differently for this to come to life. We're already seeing Tupukanga building a national network of vocational education sites, bringing together work-based, in-classroom and online learning together. The new unified funding system, which is going to create new ways of funding to support this vision. And workforce development councils now giving all industries a strong influence and voice directly into education and training to support New Zealand businesses. Our RSLGs are going to ensure that that voice of communities can be integrated now into planning and investment in the training back into their communities. So this collaborative approach aims to encourage more businesses to support earning while learning and give them access to people with the skills they need. So as a learner, knowing that you will be work ready when you start out is an important part of encouraging people into vocational education. And no part of the system can achieve everything by themselves. Integration and collaboration are going to be really critical as we move through the next few years. This isn't a one and done, it is going to take time. And so we're moving from a system where competition was encouraged to one where collaboration is valued and supported, with really clearly defined roles for all the different entities that are part of the system. An important input into the new system is the benchmark standard it sets for achieving equity of outcomes for Māori, Pasifika, disabled, and underserved learner groups, and the requirement to honour Te Reti. We've already seen new approaches in how our new entities are structuring themselves, leading the way for us. So I want to thank you all for your engagement and resilience during the initial set of changes which have happened over the past couple of years, all while New Zealand has coped with COVID. But the change, and my message today is the change is only just beginning. The heavy lifting still needs to happen, and it's at the start of its journey through our workforce development councils, our RSLGs, and participation with Tupukanga, our wānanga, and PTEs. And it's these changes that will improve the outcomes for learners, employers, iwi, and our communities. So, my challenge to you is ask questions, challenge things when you're in conversations. Don't accept the norm. You know, we are striving through innovation and change because that's what's going to be required to ensure we get a better implementation. Ngā mihi.
Do I just start?
So, Grant or Iona?
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's a delight to be here. Thank you very much, Gillian. And can I also acknowledge the speeches of the two ministers? I think we've been extremely fortunate in this project that we've had such strong political leadership, who've pushed to make sure that the infrastructure that we need to have in place is here. And as Gillian has said, we've got the bones, if you like, of something to build meat on, but we've got a lot to do. You've asked me, though, what my vision for the change program and for RoVE changes are. And I suppose there are a number, but I'm going to pick two today. And the first is that I'd like to see a greater volume and diversity of people into vocational education, especially women and disabled people, and greater equity of outcome, especially Māori and Pacific. And the second thing that I really value about the opportunity that this change brings is that there will be clearer pathways between school, vocational education, into employment, and in due course back to vocational training to retrain, upskill, and reskill as employment and other opportunities change. So critical to achieving that diversity into vocational education and equity of outcomes are programs and environments that are trusted and support diverse learners to succeed. Building programs that reflect whanaungatanga, manaakitanga, mahitahi, and ako will support Māori to succeed as Māori. We know that. We have research to show that. And we also know that when those principles are in action, all ākonga work well and succeed. That is a big shift in our system to put those Te Ao Māori values at the centre of how we work. That's what starts to give life to the relationship of Te Reti. There are some good examples already in place that we can build on, where iwi are actively involved in the provision of vocational education. For example, in Opotiki College, it is partnered with Whakatohia iwi. The iwi is providing funding for a covered building site to build 2 houses on the college grounds. One house will be built is under the Māori Pacific Trades Training Initiative, and the other by Opotiki College. And Opotiki Council have now signalled their intent to provide sites Whakaanga Ora builds to provide apprenticeship employment for graduates. That's an end-to-end system where the community, iwi, local government and local businesses and government have joined up to provide a pipeline of opportunity for those young people. The other shift that we need in order to grow the volume and diversity is vocational education to have parity of esteem. Our konga need to be confident in the training they're receiving and that it will be valued, up to date and relevant to the needs of employers. This speaks to the critical roles of the WDCs and the RSLGs. We have an opportunity through the reforms to set up a system that more seamlessly connects in-school vocational education and workplace-based learning with post-school vocational education and workplace learning opportunities. This is key to achieving those pathways. They need to be easier to navigate. And I'm reminded of a conversation with some boys at Kaitaia College who were talking about how they didn't really like leaving Taitokoro, and why would you, of course, but they didn't like leaving Taitokoro to go to Tamaki Makaurau because they got lost on the motorways. They'd wanted to go to Onehunga. They took the wrong off-ramp and found themselves in Epsom. And that, unfortunately, is too often the case for our young people trying to navigate their way through what has been a very complex system for those young people, often who have the least capability to navigate and to know systems. So we know that parents and whānau have a major influence on the decisions of young people. However, many young people and their whānau are not currently exposed to the wide range of industry career opportunities during their crucial schooling years. When they're making those decisions, excuse me, I haven't got COVID. There are some perceptions still that vocational education is less highly valued than academic pathways. This will change over time as the evidence of good quality offerings become talked about in local communities. And we can already see the seeds of this in some really excellent examples. And one that I'm going to talk about now is at Massey High School. Massey High School has about 280 students in around a dozen academy programs. These include hospitality, building and construction, tourism plus, automotive, and more recently, girls in carpentry. The Building Academy currently builds 5 or 6 three-bedroom houses each year for Whakaanga Ora. Over the past year, these houses have been transported to Huntly and Gisborne, providing high-quality housing stock in those areas. These are examples where young people who would otherwise have been lost to formal education are turning up to school because of the academy that's offered to them. We know that during lockdown, many of those young people couldn't wait to get back to school so they could get on with their studies. We also know that when work of this sort is available on campus, those young people who might previously have been less inclined to learn maths or science or English reading, all of a sudden realise the value of it. In terms of growing the number of learners involved in vocational education, Tupukanga and other providers will have links into wide ranges of businesses. The raised profile that Tupukanga offers in its broad reach into business and communities will see much more people wanting to take up vocational learning, coupled with greater flexibility in learning on the job, on campus or online, will support the growth of vocational education. Again, there are practical examples of this already in place, and the Ara Trust construction project is one. It has many, many partners engaged with Manurewa High School, Aorere College, Onehunga High School, Southern Cross campus, and has partnered with Auckland Airport, Kainga Ora, as well as many industries, including Main Freight, Hines, Ingram. These examples have been in place for some time. So we already have the seeds of radically new ways of engaging diverse learners. The RoVE reforms have the potential to ignite a flame under those, to make them even better, to make them ubiquitous, and to turn what has been a rather poor end of our training institutions into a rich and vibrant opportunity for our very, very diverse and very wonderful young people of this nation. So no pressure, young people. This is the opportunity to seize a new way of doing things. And as Gillian said, to challenge the old, to be courageous, and to really set out very high expectations. I most certainly am ambitious for the changes that that RoVE brings to us. So all the very best for the rest of the session today. Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa. Can I hand over to you, Grant? Stephen, sorry.
Ina mana, ina reo, ina waka, tina koutou, tina koutou. Thank you very much, Lee, for introducing us this morning. And can I just say hello to my colleagues on the panel. My name is Stephen Town. I'm the Chief Executive of Tupukanga, and I've been in the role since July 2020. As you all know, Tupukanga has been established as one part of the 7 major reforms that have been referred to already by Gillian and Iona, building a new vocational education system for Aotearoa that will be fit for purpose and more successful. So the Tupukanga vision is to bring our function and purpose and our place in this new vocational education system to light, and to do that carefully and enthusiastically over the next 7 to 9 years. And I think that's a really important part of explaining our thinking about the future. How do we move forward and take this system, take communities and employers and learners and their whānau forward together in a way that they can understand what we're doing and at what pace we are travelling. We have a major milestone coming up in January 2023, where the polytechnics and institutes of technology fold into Tupukanga and are dissolved as independent entities. That might not sound like a major step forward to many people, but believe me, it is, because what that does is bring to an end the competitive system that Tupukanga has been asked to replace. And that's a critical step that will occur on the 1st of January 2023. Also by that date, we will have nearly 9 of the industry training organisations will have folded their training activities into Tupukanga. So we form our new place in the system on 1/1/23, but we do start a marathon of transformation at that time too. So we've set out 3 time horizons, 2023, 2026, and then 2027 through to 2033, so that we can try and describe for people that this is something that will take a long time to achieve, breaking down those competitive behaviours and bringing collaboration to the fore are our major challenges. We've also been charged with building a new organisation that can give effect to not just honour the treaty as a new concept. And I think I'm right in saying that we're the first tertiary education organisation to have that challenge put in front of us as we build and contribute to the new system and build Tupukanga into a responsive and vibrant tertiary education provider that has some things that have been missing in our system up until now. And so we're talking about things like national reach, unifying our programs and bringing consistency right across Aotearoa to the delivery of those learning experiences, whether they be online, on campus, or on job. Personally, I'm a proud graduate of a polytechnic, have sons who have been through the construction apprenticeship system, and I would join the other earlier speakers in saying that the vocational education has not been valued in the same way that higher education might have been. And so we have a storytelling challenge to overcome in building the reputation of Tupukanga. We are truly committed to turning around Māori learner success as we build a Te Tiriti consistent organisation, and we've taken early steps to build in the basis of success by putting in place Te Pai Tawhiti as one of our very first initiatives in forming Tupukanga was to give us a treaty excellence framework that is self-reflective and that we could apply to ourselves and obviously encourage the Polytechnic Network and the Industry Training Organisation Network to embrace Te Pai Tawhiti as one of the early initiatives that we could demonstrate to our stakeholders and our partners that we're serious about what we're trying to achieve. We also need to turn around Pacifica people's success and disabled people and other groups who have traditionally been underserved or simply do not want to come and be part of a big institution that doesn't acknowledge the individual and their whānau as being at the centre of what we do. There have been many attempts to improve our vocational education system in Aotearoa, and we want to make sure at Tupukanga that we can take every step possible to achieve success and for the way that we go about our work to be reflected really positively, particularly with Te Tiriti partners, by building the best relationships that we possibly can and to build momentum and enthusiasm in an organisation which by early February will have 230,000 learners and about 10,000 staff. So this is a very big undertaking. It's one that we don't take lightly, and we're delighted to be surrounded by partners and supporters this morning as part of the panel, and look forward to having an opportunity to answer questions later this morning. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Tēnā koutou, o tira tēnā koe Stephen, Gillian, Iona mō kōrero, ko tāpai here. Thank you for our first three panelists. We're going to carry on. I'm not going to take too much time, and it is now my privilege to introduce a very good friend and a mentor of mine, Dr. Graham Clinkham. Tēnei te mihi atu ki a koe, katahuri atu ki a koe kei taku rangatira.
Tēnā koe, Lee. Kei aku rangatira, tēnā koutou katoa. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow speakers and everyone at this hui. RoVE I think, is being brought to life by a mix of old hands and new hands, by a combination of old entities and new purpose-built entities. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the strength that this blend brings. We've got enormous depth of experience and knowledge across the VET system. And we also have many newly empowered actors with fresh aspirations, new ideas and insights. So we're all party to building something that will serve Aotearoa better. And as a member of the RoVE Governance Board, I'd really like to thank everyone at this hui for the incredible mahi that's being done to transform the system. My vision for RoVE is simply that we collectively deliver on the possibilities that have been built into the architecture of this reform. Namely, that the voice and influence of end users of VET education, employers, industry, community, iwi, are significantly strengthened in the system, and that the needs of learners are put front and centre, so that, for example, standards and qualifications are designed in a manner that results in learners having the skills, the knowledge, and the attributes that are highly valued by those end users. So that the VET system allows for learner mobility, as we heard from Minister Hipkins this morning, across modes of delivery and TEO settings. So that VET in senior secondary, as Iona has reminded us, is fully integrated into apprenticeships and post-secondary study pathways. And so that the campus-based VET training benefits from more real-world exposure and contexts. And in turn, that work-based training is underpinned by stronger pedagogy. So that Māori and Pacific students can learn in culturally appropriate environments. And so that we give effect to Te Treaty through the place of iwi, hapu, Māori in the governance, the management and the operation of the VET system. And finally, I also, on behalf of NZQA and so many other actors, aspire to see Mātauranga Māori increasingly reflected in qualifications in a manner that benefits Māori students first and foremost, but actually ultimately benefits all learners in Aotearoa. So all of these aspirations, of course, are no small ask. But I want to argue that the foundations are really strong. Arguably, it's a very cleverly designed system under RoVE, with many of those unproductive, historic, competitive tensions that we heard Stephen refer to before being removed, with each key actor in the RoVE system having clear, distinct roles. And because many of the entities are brand new in RoVE, there's an opportunity to remake the system, not merely iterate improvement. And the roles and work of each actor are additive and reinforcing. And looking back, I think we can all see now that funding changes alone simply wouldn't have been sufficient to transform the system, nor would qualification changes alone have been sufficient, and nor would greater stakeholder input to VET without the meaningful powers of influence and control that end users have in the system design. And I think it's really valuable to just pause and reflect on how every element of the VET system has been redesigned, and that in turn this level of change affords enormous opportunity, but is not in itself sufficient for transformation. We're all going to need to unlearn some behaviours and learn new behaviours. And I think we shouldn't underestimate how deeply embedded some of those competitive behaviours that, again, Stephen referred to earlier, have been in the VET system. So RoVE is going to demand of us all deeper and more enduring collaborative ways of working. But I think there's much to be really optimistic about in this regard. And let me give you just one quick example. The co-design work on new skill standards, which you'll hear about in detail this afternoon, is really challenging work, but it's being designed within the parameters of cabinet decisions, absolutely ground up by all the key stakeholders working collaboratively. And as they do so, as we do so, we're picturing the kind of system that we want to have, one where there's more national relevance, more national consistency in vet training where that is important, but equally protecting the ability to allow for greater variation and flexibility where that is valued by employers and by industry. So to circle back to my vision for RoVE, it's that the execution, which we are all part of, allows for the fullest realization of what was intended. And that implies we'll keep partnership, equity, collaboration, I think outstanding change management practices and deep stakeholder engagement at the centre of our approach. Ngā mihi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Koutou katoa, ko te mea tuatahi, mihi kawana kia koe te kai whakahaere a li, mo tō mihi kawana, mo tō krakia haitimata te hui, te kōrero mo tēnei rā, no reira, tēnei te mihi atu i a koe. Koutou katoa ngā whānau, ngā mema, kua taimai raro i te tune o tēnei te kaupapa o te Zoom, wahanga mihi kawana kia koutou katoa. Kia ora whānau, Tō Whānewa's my name, co-chair of Te Tai Tokerau RSLG, as well as Chief Executive for Te Tai Tokerau Wānanga. So look, just here to share some of our thoughts and perspectives in terms of the role of the RSLG across the RoVE network. So we all know that they were established to support better ways of meeting future skills and workforce needs in our regions and also in our cities. The actual co-chair model, which includes iwi Māori, is really innovative for us, but it also provides that opportunity for iwi Māori leadership, particularly when we think about systems change. Te reo o te kāinga is critical and is a fundamental tenet of sustainability. So too, and just want to note some of the previous speakers, Iona and Grant and Stephen, around the role of mātauranga. Mātauranga Māori, mātauranga āhapu, aiwi, āwhānau. So equity does count as we think about how all these elements of RoVE come together. So that current split that we have in the system, it has systemically failed many parts of our communities, particularly our Māori and our Pasifika, our tangata whai kaha ākonga, who really haven't been able to achieve their potential. So the vision for the reform system is to start with these ākonga at its heart, and knowing what is good for Māori is good for everyone and good for Aotearoa's future. And the RSLGs then have a direct role in achieving this, not only by responding to the traditional supply and demand chain needs, but also by market shaping, by sense making on the ground in our communities to influence sustainable and meaningful employment, training and skills and outcomes in our regions. So we've got, as RSLGs, a much broader reach and levers of influence in workforce and skills planning, but also including welfare and immigration. So those solutions that are developed to address regional workforce and skills opportunities, they contribute to Aotearoa being a more inclusive, sustainable and productive place to work and live in by working with our regional partners, our hapu, our iwi, our community, the other parts of RoVE and government agencies. And where we want to get to there is we want to drive some decent work and quality jobs, particularly in Te Tai Tokerau. When we think about our isolated and rural communities, how do we bring that value into those nooks and crannies? How do we drive the quality in the workforce and the whole system, especially for our rangatahi and tamariki mokopuna, and also our Māori Pasifika tangata whaikaha populations. So look, ultimately, if the collective value of these reforms is not realised and is not applicable in our communities, in our papakainga, our marketplaces, our akonga, then you've got to question the effort and the value of the effort. So again, that direct line of sight into our communities is really important when we think about these reforms and where they're going to hit. Regionally, success for Te Tai Tokerau means not only crafting this resilient and adaptive system, but it must bring that direct value into our communities. So our employers, our markets, through sense making, help shape those markets that due to COVID and other impacts are already in movement. So this shaping means that our Tai Tokerau framework and our Tai Tokerau vision of success must be underpinned by Mātauranga Māori. That is our foundation. That is what predicates our regional workforce plan. So Mātauranga Hapu a whānau is our intervention logic model. Because Mātauranga, from a Tai Tokerau perspective, not only makes sense because of the demographic circumstances of Te Tai Tokerau, but also because Mātauranga is inclusive and it is resonant. It's inclusive because it can meet the needs for communities and their aims to be sustainable, which is where we locate our akonga, our employers, and also those other key actors in our communities. It is also resonant because our employer markets, for our employers and for those marketplaces, Mātauranga is also about opportunity. And that's a fundamental tenet of commerce. So I know that in some of our communities, particularly when we think about employers and our marketplaces, there seems to be the sense that there is a real challenge to link the two together. They are actually intricately linked if we really understand what this means for us in our regions. So how might this particularly look when we think about bringing the value of these RoVE reforms together? Well, we have some sort of nascent activities occurring in Te Tai Tokerau at the moment. So one example is that we in Te Tai Tokerau Wānanga, we've partnered with Te Kahu o Taonui, which is the 12 iwi collective in Te Tai Tokerau, with MSD, with TPK, to bring some of our NEETs whānau into the mix to build about 48 mobile cabins. And that supports the isolation challenges in Tai Tokerau, where in a lot of our communities, there is overcrowding and access to accommodation was even in a crisis situation before COVID. So what that means is that we're enabling different and what we would see as very uncommon partners to sit around the table to solve a regionally relevant problem. So we see this as some of the enabling elements of the RoVE reforms, not only to give us permission to be able to do what we need to do in order to support the here and now, but also using that shoulder-to-shoulder trust element to drive a more tangible future, which has Mātauranga Māori as its framework, but also has our communities and our akonga and the direct line of sight to them. Another example is hauora. So that is a priority for our region. It is in our workforce plan, and that's not only because COVID is present. It's not likely to go away anytime soon, but also because of elements that tell us that we've got a workforce, a health workforce that actually want to retire, but they can't because some of our practitioners cannot hand over to a someone because there isn't a someone at the moment. And their clients are important, so they don't want to just abandon them. So for us, there are some really critical priorities with healthcare. The other lens here is from our communities. So you have whānau now in their nooks and crannies thinking about looking at their aunties, their uncles, their koros and their kuia and their elders and others who have got chronic health conditions and see that they have deferred their healthcare needs because COVID's taken the stage. And this has meant diminishing healthcare is being witnessed more and more in those isolated in rural communities. So rural health in Hauora Māori is a demand because ako ngā whānau do not want to see their whānau's conditions persist and have that feeling of helplessness to alleviate their mamae. So again, this is about how our prioritisation as part of our SLG, the sense making in our communities and across our networks actually helps us to build something that is relevant and resonant across our communities. So from a national perspective, this means that educational agencies, providers, workforce development councils need to know what skills are in demand regionally and can tailor their programs so that they provide the courses, apprenticeships, pre-employment training, qualifications for the region's needs. So getting that pipeline right to respond to those priorities is important. Landing on the right priorities is also quite critical as well. And yes, our immigration system can provide an extra skilled workers that are needed while continuing to prioritise our jobs for whānau in Taitokero and Aotearoa. So achieve all of the above, we have to break down those silos, and it is something that Grant and Stephen and Iona have also mentioned as well. So in order to do that, we need to use and act on it in a holistic way. So we stand shoulder to shoulder with our iwi, local and central government agencies and communities through existing mechanisms, such as things like the Northern Intersectoral Forum, to become an enabling force for our collective aspirations. We know that some of the great work through Tupukanga on the learner journey is also about te reo te kāinga. So those lenses of akonga are really important. And I know my colleague Tanya Winslade and our akonga champion from Taitokero as well, Darian Watene, will share these insights with you later on today. So being aware of and tapping into and influencing related government programs that relate to these is also a priority. So the type of change that we're all involved in, it really won't happen overnight, and it won't happen easily. It takes, I guess, a change in what we understand as some really deeply rooted mental models in terms of what our thinking is at the moment. So the liberation of that is quite important when we think about the reforms. It's not only about the structure and the framework and the process, but it's also clearly about the mindset and around how we shift those mindsets to be able to bring the full value of what we've got. So success is hard fought. We should celebrate our small wins along the way. Liz Brown, my fellow co-chair from Canterbury RSLG, will be talking about some of the small yet important steps already starting to be made along our journey. So koutou katoa, that's my kōrero. Mihi kawana kia koutou, kia pai tōra. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. Wayne Ngata, chair of Taumata Arunui and caretaker of my son's dog. Necessary attributes. Great to hear everybody. Great to see colleagues, and I see 192 odd people tuning in. Just carrying on from where Toa was in terms of Mātauranga Māori, I want to start by acknowledging Moana Jackson. He died last week. Those of you who don't know Moana, I think everyone here knew who Moana was. But he reminds us about how we must consider what the fundamental causes are of the disparities and inequities that continue to exist for Māori and others, and therefore challenge ourselves. I'm talking not just non-Māori, but Māori ourselves, to ensure that we continue to, I suppose, put a stake in the ground as to where our starting point is. This afternoon, Charles Royal will present Taumata Arunui's vision to this forum, so I don't want to steal his thunder. Suffice to say that it's taken us a good year during COVID to develop some clear thinking around what we think success looks like for Māori in the tertiary sector. including, of course, RoVE. And this was, and Taumata Nui came about in a time when RoVE was starting, it had started, and the minister asked us to focus on that as part of our work, a big part of our work at that time. What I will say is that the vision that we eventually did come up with is this. The best indigenously inspired tertiary education system ever. Now, I'll let Charles elaborate on that, but essentially, it's about considering what those fundamental causes are of inequities and disparities, and creating systems, encouraging systems, and influencing systems to fundamentally change. I'm reminded that we have a large number of what I call clip-ons, pilot attempts to address disparity and inequity, and they've seldom ever become the core function of an institution or an agency. And so it is a radical change. I'm very much encouraged by the words of those who have spoken before me. And within all of those, we can see the direction that we need to take around collaboration, certainly, around considering other knowledges, whether that be mātauranga Māori or mātauranga Hāmoa, and around valuing that and supporting that, so that people can be themselves in the 21st century and beyond, and be successful in that. We, with Taumata Nui, will release our paper, our manu kōkiri, we've called it, which spells out in more detail what we think our vision is. We've got to remain, I suppose, at a more strategic level, because if we deep dive into bits of the system, as you know, you can get lost in there and lose sight of the forest. So we're keeping an eye on the forest, so to speak, and that's our role. Having said that, I'd like to actually finish with a couple of examples that I've noticed in recent times. Big examples of where there is collaboration and there is an equity of outcome for Māori in particular. And so if I think about, apart from what Toa spoke about happening up in Taitokere, if I think about the recent floods in the Tairāwhiti and the people who work on the roads, my nieces, nephews, cousins, and in their work, a large number of them are also learning. So when we think about earning and learning, they're doing exactly that, and they're doing it in a particular way that supports them being located in their own region, doing work for the people in their particular region. In the last week, it's fair to say that a lot of them have been working around the clock, so that you get instances of the Mangahoini Bridge in Tokomaru being repaired way ahead of schedule, and someone suggested that perhaps we should have put them onto Transmission Gully, but that's another issue. But I must acknowledge them because they're picking up qualifications because they're able to while they're working. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge the work that is being done at Opotiki. You mentioned Whakatohea and Opotiki College, and that's the second one. So when you get that secondary, tertiary interaction, absolutely necessary, so that the pathway or the pathways for Māori and others from school into tertiary and through tertiary out the other end is, I don't like the word, this particular word, but seamless, is accessible, is enabling, is seamless for our people. And there is success, huge success in that. The last one I just want to point out, without going into any detail, is what's happening in Ruakura. With Waikato people, they own the port, inland port. It is a massive, massive undertaking that requires not just work, but learning and qualification seeking in the process. So if we need examples of what the fundamental approaches are that we should be considering and working into our particular systems, then there are enough around. We're encouraged, certainly by what we're doing with others in the tertiary sector, but also understanding that the tertiary sector should not be standing alone. And I'm talking about what happens before that and goes into the tertiary sector. So with that, ka nui ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, e aronui mai ki tēnei o ngā wānanga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Hene rangi.
E mihi ana kia koutou katoa e are tāringa mai. Kua pāuku whakapapa I runga I te chat kia rāpopoto taku kōrero. Engari e mihi ana ki ngā mate huhua o te motu. Tēnā no koutou. Rātou, kia rātou tātou, te hunga ora kia tātou, tēnā tātou. I want you to close your eyes, whānau. And I want you, all 193 of you, we've gone up a number. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think back to your childhood. And I want to ask the question, what did you want to be? And I want you to pop it in the chat. I'd really love to hear what your vision was for yourself back in childhood. Ka pai, kia ora Winnie, awesome. Ka pai, workforce development whānau coming up front, look at that. Chewbacca, yeah, Tama, that sounds like you. E hoa mā. If we think about what our visions are for our future as a child, sometimes they're imbued with some purity. And sometimes they're viewed with those lenses of a child where sometimes we lose those. So we're here in this forum to talk about what our visions are for vocational education. And I'd like to just ask us to go back, unpeel back all the taumaha, unpeel back all of the things that inhibit us from being really transformational. And let's do this together. When I was 11 and I was at a hui wānanga, a wānanga reo, and my best friend was 10. It was the first time we'd met, actually. And I said to her, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she was 10 and she said, I want to be a proactive initiator. I'm going to crush the system that holds us down. I'm going to smash it to smithereens. And she goes, what are you going to be when you grow up? I was 11. And I said, I'm going to be a parasite. She went, what? I said, like an apple. I'm going to understand the system. I'm going to get into the system. I'm going to get to its core of the system. And I'm going to eat that core so that we can create a new system. And maybe from me on the inside and you on the outside, or you on the inside, me on the outside, depending on our part of the journey, we'll meet halfway in between. And she said, what if we don't get to the same place? And I said, well, that's where aroha comes in. We'll get there. We just have to get to being an adult where we might get listened to. There's no word of a lie, whānau. That's exactly the conversation as an 11-year-old that I had with my beautiful cousin and friend, who now is a proactive initiator, using the form of art in the form of protest in the form of art, to get her kōrero through there. And, you know, my vision for a vocational education system is that there is a system that will help that 11-year-old and that 10-year-old to find their path, that their curiosity and their passion and their belief in the people will be enabled. And I probably leave this question with you, why at age 10 and 11 were we even thinking like that? Because we were born into it. We were born into whānau who knew that it takes time. And we have to whāngai our children to understand what their role is in making a difference for the future. So my vision for a vocational education system is that it's an ecosystem that stretches the life course of people, both individuals and collectives. So toa, thinking about our roe, thinking about the relevance and the importance from that rohe to this rohe, is absolutely about life course. And in our communities and in our whānau, our life course is intergenerational. So whānau, what do we want for 100 years' time, 150 years' time? We are putting the paving down for that now. I want an ecosystem that is enriched by pono, tika and maramatanga. Pono based on goodwill and tiriti, a tiriti that is honoured. Tika, which means purposeful or relevant and enabling. And maramatanga, based on insights from all knowledge systems, as you said, Wayne. But our knowledge systems have equal explanatory power and authorising environments that support that. Kia tu mai a tātou I te ao I te pō, so that we can stand courageously, regardless of the winds. Very quickly, and I did ask to go last, so my bad, because I see the time. But I want to tell a very, very quick story. Lee, don't cut me off, Tungane. At age 15, I met Moana Jackson for the first time, and he told a story. It was a hui of 400 rangatahina in 1990, commemorating 150 years of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And he told us about him being in a car with his mokopuna at an intersection on a red light, probably on Courtney Place in Wellington. And his mokopuna called out and pointed out the window and said, "Koro, look, Dickhead Smith." And his koro just went, "What?" And he pointed to a business banner and it said, "Dick in a face, Smith." It was Dick Smith Electrical, but to his mokopuna, it was Dickhead Smith, because his mokopuna saw the world in a different way. So what if we got out of our own way and asked our mokopuna what was the future they want? And what could we create with them, co-design with them, co-decide with them? And from a Māori woodview perspective and from a workforce development kahui ahumahi perspective, the one thing that we would like to engage with, especially with Taumata Aronui and others, is the ability to create an independent space that Māori thinking can thrive, and that Māori's thinking, not stinking, can enable and contribute to a healthy Aotearoa without compromise and being impeded by the systems that don't understand Dickhead Smith. Kia ora tātou I te whānau.
Kātia kera, kei aku rangatira, kei ngā waha kōrero, ngā waha ki o tēnā wahi, tēnei kamihi atu rā kia koutou. I would just like to thank all of our panelists for the great kōrero and for providing your own vision and to be telling the story. So e mihi nei kia koutou, kei aku rangatira, tēnei te whanui atu kia koutou. Very good, everybody. So we've heard some awesome kōrero, and I can see in our Q&A that you're really getting the hang of it, which is awesome. So kia kaha tonu te pātai mai. We encourage you to still send your questions through, and you're getting the hang of the like and the upvote as well. So pai tēnā. Unfortunately, we were wanting to offer some pātai, some questions, but as we're all aware, we're running right on time. So what we're going to do is we're going to collate all the questions that have been sent through and ensure that we do provide responses to you all. So your questions don't go unnoticed. Ka pai. So before we move on, we're going into the breakout rooms at the moment. So I want to give you some quick kōrero on the breakout rooms as to how you can function with those, because that's when you're going to really engage and have a kōrero with one another. So when the session ends, you will find yourself back in the lobby where you can click on a table to join. So you even get to choose like a real table. EME calls these tables the social lounge, which is a nice way to think about our breakout rooms, sitting around a table, connecting, having a good old wānanga, having a good old kōrero. So you can see how many people are already in the room, and we encourage you to join one that isn't too full. We want everyone to connect, collaborate, and work together, so make the most of your opportunity. Lastly, just before we go, The breakout rooms are not recorded. Ka pai? So discuss freely. Note takers and facilitators will be there to provide a general overview so you can all collaborate on what is important moving forward. So just a reminder as well, after our breakout room sessions, so at about 11:15 to 11 o'clock, you'll be in a break. So the next time I'll be seeing you all back here is at 11 o'clock after your break. So kei aku hoa, kei aku rangatira o te pai, tēnei te mea atu kia koutou, o tira kia tātou katoa, kia pai te wānanga. See you soon.